Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, finally, or again, the Russians are talking about moving the United Nations headquarters from the New York City to somewhere else. And there are some two options that the Russians are thinking about. And the reason why they're obviously pushing this now is because they think that those two countries are at least more neutral, let's put it this way, more neutral than the United States of America are. And he uses the last situations that was, I think, created by the US by not allowing Russian media, people to show up in New York when Lavrov came to New York at the United Nations. So not, the Americans are talking about the free speech and, respecting media, and all that. And they did not allow Russian journalists to come to New York. They denied their visas. So let's see what Russia brings to the table and if that is feasible, if they can do it, or anyone can eventually take it from New York City, take it to somewhere else. So I have this first article. I have three articles actually. The first article comes from Sputnik, and it's titled "Moving United Nations Headquarters Out of US to Neutral Ground Reflects Evolution of Multipolarity." Or multipolarity, however we want to call it. So if you remember this location, I think the land here was donated by a big American a rich guy, if you remember that one. And they would, the Americans said, we will do this, we can have it here. All right. Well, it seems like they're not living up to their pledges. Sergei Lavrov agreed this week with a suggestion that the UN should move to another venue outside the US. Professor Alfred de Zayas, former US independent expert on international order, said that would chime with a new global multipolarity. End quote here. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov's calls for the United Nations to move its headquarters out of the US was a justified response to Washington's repeated, and I'm quoting, violations, end quote, of its neutrality, a former official has said. Washington's decision to deny visas to accredited Russian journalists to cover their country's presidency of the United Nations Security Council prompted Lavrov to call for the Club of Nations to move its headquarters from New York to a site in a more neutral country. And I'm quoting, "I think that would be good for New York," Lavrov said in reply to a journalist's question during his visit to the building to deliver a speech to the United Nations Security Council, which was scathing in its criticism of the US and its closest allies. Cuban-American former UN official Alfred de Zayas told Sputnik that such move would be appropriate in a multipolar world emerging from US hegemony and only just given Washington's multiple violations of the headquarters agreement, end quote. Relocating United Nations headquarters to neutral ground increasingly appears like a sensible and implementable idea, which also reflects the evolution of the world since 1945 and the necessity to facilitate multilateralism and multipolarity, the Zayas said. Now, he said that since the UN was founded in 1945, the US has repeatedly violated several of the international body conventions, making it difficult for the organization to pursue its work. Blah, blah, blah. Now, what they say is that before that it was often met at a former League of Nations seat in Geneva, Switzerland. That was before the Second World War and so on. Because I'm quoting, US's misconduct as a host, many countries' delegations feel that a change of venue could enable the organization to function more efficiently in the future. Yeah, and then they give some examples of what happened here in order to support that, and they think that the best venue could be Austria or the Netherlands, or they try to reshape the United Nations in a certain way that they think it's more just. Well, I don't know how that would happen. Now, US abuses status of UN headquarters, host country, Russian Foreign Ministry. So he has the same thing on this one, that United States is abuses and all that, including the last one, should make countries maybe think of a different location. Moscow would like to see the organization's headquarters relocated to Switzerland or Austria. Russia lists obstacles to moving UN from New York. This is according to Russia Today, and I said Switzerland or Austria. I looked through the article, and basically, or not basically, exactly what they claim is a lot of countries own property in New York City. Therefore, it's very hard to get rid of that and supposedly find in whatever, Austria or Switzerland. It's not that it's impossible, it just would take time, I think. Is that a desire to do that? I don't think so. Will it happen? I don't think so. What I think could happen, it would be a rupture, isolation, or rupture between two clubs. I think there would be, again, like it was during the Cold War, two clear clubs, and in between countries that were going to play to whomever is the higher bidder here. So they have United States and the Weasel countries, which is about no more than 50 countries. And then you have the other one that's in formation right now on the foundation of, or at least the friendship, cooperation. I don't want to call it friendship, there's no such a thing like that. Friendship until our interests collide, and then we're not going to be friends, because that's reality. These friendships are based on interest, not on I like you, you like me. Could be a little bit, but you know what I mean, it's my country versus your country. If I want something from you, I'll take it. And if you want something from me, you'll take it. You think it's differently? Well, history is evidence to what I said. So, are there some countries that are close to be friends? Yes, could be. Now here we have, as I said, there's gonna fracture into two poles. Now, if these poles were gonna go further and further and further, and the guys in between, with you or with you and with you both, then probably United Nations will just disappear, and will have these guys are going to have their Weasel United Nation, the other ones, or United Nations, whatever, the club's nation, and the other ones will have their Weasel United Nations, or their club. And here is the 50 states, more or less, under US's mastership, the plantation of United States with all the plantation slaves over there, and one house servant, which is Great Britain. Everybody else is plantation slave right there, cutting sugar cane for the master. So sometimes friends wants to come in and play a little bit in the kitchen, and thinking that it's a house servant, but Great Britain makes sure that kicks it out and it stays right here, but it's still a servant, you know what I mean? On the other hand, you have China and Russia, I said it many times, plus India probably, and everybody on the structure of BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and so on. So I think they will have separate institutions, regulating maritime commerce and insurance and all that. And then when they're gonna, they will come and talk, and little by little come close, like they came as close as they could in the so-called Cold War, where they also communicated and they cooperated. If you think that it was the Cold War, it was Cold War for us, but for them over there, they cooperated, they did business behind the scenes and so on. They had different ideologies and so on, but the same here is going to happen. The big guys are going to cooperate, discuss, communicate, like they do right now in a war that's occurring on the territory of Ukraine between those guys and this guy. So they cooperate, they communicate. I'm talking about United States and Russia. They communicate, and then the US tells whomever is on the territory, in the field in Ukraine, hey, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't hit it within Russia. Well, we give you this, but you can't use it to do this. Well, why? Because they communicate and they say, if you do that, we're going to do that. You want that? Yeah, well, let me think about it. And if you do it, I'm going to do this. That's the way they communicate, if you know what I mean. So yes, they want it. I don't think it's going to happen like that. I think it's going to happen like that. And then closer, 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 or maybe boom. What other options are? Remain like this. If Russia collapses, they're going to jump right on China next. The promoters of peace, I'm talking, will jump on China. The same promoters of peace who promote peace in Ukraine against the evil Russians. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.